Discover the 8 shocking carbs for you must avoid and 4 transformative choices revealed for seniors. Betty stood in her cozy, cluttered kitchen, the scent of cinnamon and apples swirling around her. Thanksgiving was just days away, and the thought of her beloved dishes brought a warmth that filled her heart with love until she remembered Ryan's comments. "Mom, you really should think about those carbs," he had said over his salad the other night. The way his voice lingered on the word should gnaw at her. Tradition was her lifeblood. How could her son suggest replacing the heart of her Thanksgiving with quinoa? She puffed her cheeks out, scowling at the thought, her hands rhythmically kneading dough. Yet the joy was veiled by a nagging anxiety. A dizzy spell flitted through her mind, reminding her of bingo night last week when the room seemed to spin. The clinic doctor's stern face had slipped through her mind. "High blood pressure, Betty. You need to make some changes." Her stomach churned as she contemplated the implications. Could she really compromise her legendary stuffing and pumpkin pie, all in the name of health? The grocery store felt alien as she wrestled with a bag of quinoa that had somehow become a symbolic weight in her hands. She fumbled through the unfamiliar aisles, her heart racing as she caught sight of a college kid, oblivious as he juggled an armful of kale. Betty bit her lip. Was she really that out of touch? The gossiping neighbor, resplendent in her holiday spirit, didn't he even pause to greet her? They were in a world she felt disconnected from, a realm where traditions were blurred and replaced by trends. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The coffee gathering at the local diner felt more like a therapy session than a social event. "You wouldn't believe my first experience with a vegan recipe," she shared, laughter sparkling in her eyes. Yet the looming tension crept around the corners of the table. They were laughing, but Betty felt the weight of desperation pressing down on her shoulders. Torn between past and future, she faced the haunting possibility of change. She would say, why not ditch the white bread? But deep down, her heart trembled. What if her family didn't understand? The conflict escalated at home as Thanksgiving approached. The kitchen became a battleground when she opened the family recipe book, fighting back anger and sorrow. "You think tradition is just about the food," she quarreled, her voice echoing through the walls, and perhaps her own heart as well. "It's about love." Memories of baking with her grandmother surfaced, laughter etched in the flour-dusted kitchen, but tangled with fear. Ryan's response was quiet, yet it crashed into her walls like a wave. "But Mom, love also means taking care of ourselves. Can't you see that love changes, too?" His words hung like a storm cloud, heavy with unspoken truths and memories. In that moment, uncertainty crashed over Betty. Could she embrace a change that felt so foreign without losing herself? As Thanksgiving loomed, she found herself clutching invisible threads connecting her recipes to her family's essence, and the realization that love itself might transform was the deepest cut of all. Breathless, she faced an impending holiday filled with both tradition and the daunting prospect of change. What would her table hold this year, comfort or confrontation? The taste of everything that lay ahead remained bitter with uncertainty, like a willful cook not yet ready to stir the pot. Betty's hands trembled as she surveyed the chaotic ingredients sprawled across her countertop. Each item held a memory, a flavor of old traditions she loved dearly, but they now seemed like remnants of a past she was being forced to reconsider. The familiar smell of cinnamon wafted through the air, mingling with the sharp edge of her mounting anxiety. Her thoughts spiraled as she wondered, was it truly love if she served what could jeopardize her health? The days waned, and the reality of change began to settle heavily on her shoulders like an unwelcome guest. The morning after her regrettable kitchen confrontation with Ryan, she resolved to venture back into the store, not to gather the usual staples, but to explore options that might harmonize her treasured recipes with healthier choices. Each step felt monumental. She entered the store with determination, yet her heart raced with self-doubt. She recalled Ryan's words as she approached the produce section. Quinoa sat enticingly in the grains aisle, no longer just a symbol of discomfort, but an opportunity, a potential bridge from her rich past to a healthier future. She tapped her fingers against the package, feeling its weight, weighing the worth of traditions against the need for personal responsibility. Could this single grain change the way she viewed her relationship with food and her family? Choosing items was becoming a practice of self-exploration. She carefully chose fresh spinach, vibrant tomatoes, and even a novel spice she had never dared incorporate before. It was thrilling, yet terrifying. Each selection sparked a flicker of optimism amidst her fears. Back at home, Betty began experimenting cooking in small batches, crafting meals that hinted at nostalgia while integrating newfound ideas at a first. The transition was clumsy. Ryan entered the kitchen one evening, eyebrows raised as he noticed a peculiar blend of ingredients simmering in a pot. "What is that?" he asked, his voice laced with skepticism. "It's a healthier twist on our classic pasta," she replied, voice steadier than she felt. She watched Ryan cautiously extend his fork toward the steaming bowl. Was this moment merely a reflection of change, or a test of acceptance? The silence as he tasted her creation was deafening. And then, like the dawning of a realization, the corners of his mouth lifted into a genuine smile. "Mom, this is actually good." His approval felt like a release, but it was not just about the food. It was permission to meld their past with a healthier future. Yes, she found success in adaptations. Something deeper unfolded within her, the realization that being rooted in tradition didn't mean she had to be stagnant. Each recipe shedding layers of fear. Each meal shared reaffirmed her love and dedication to her family while honoring her own needs. Questions still lingered in her mind. Was she losing the essence of her traditions or merely evolving them? Facing the looming Thanksgiving dinner, she stood before her collection of beloved recipes, and a flicker of boldness ignited within her. "I can create a table where festivity meets mindfulness," she whispered to herself. Yet that spark of courage flickered uneasily as the days passed. Would her family embrace the change she was crafting? The upcoming celebration was not merely a dinner. It was a test of acceptance and love, one that she wasn't entirely certain they were ready for. The clock ticked ominously. Thanksgiving felt like a race against time, with her identity intertwined in every dish. She steadied herself, feeling the pulse of uncertainty vibrate through the air. The moment was near when she would reveal this unfolding chapter of herself, a moment burdened with hope and fear alike. How would her family react when they saw evidence of her transformation? Would they appreciate the changes woven into the fabric of their Thanksgiving meals, or would it stir a deeper storm of resistance? Tension filled her as she looked around the kitchen, feeling the weight of her decisions looming overhead. Would she meet the moment boldly, or would doubts continue to overshadow her resolve? The clouds danced through Betty's mind like shadows, weaving doubt and anticipation simultaneously. As Thanksgiving drew closer, the kitchen transformed progressively, not just in the ingredients she chose, but in the very spirit of her culinary space. The simple act of chopping vegetables felt imbued with purpose, every sliced tomato marking another step into her new identity. One chilly afternoon, Betty found herself developing a recipe for a spiced quinoa stuffing. In her mind, it was not merely a dish, it was a statement. She pictured the family gathered around the table, and what she envisioned struck her both with joy and a piercing fear. What if they rejected not just the food, but this version of her? Rinsing the quinoa, she contemplated Ryan's approval from the first taste. If he could adapt, perhaps the rest of her family would follow suit too. Still, after the last meal's success lingered, she feared it was only an isolated victory. The kitchen felt alive with possibility but also thick with uncertainty. Not all could be won with a single taste test. As she continued crafting her dishes, she began to notice something remarkable growing within her, a confidence sparked by small, frequently overlooked victories and the realization of her own creativity. Quinoa had not just become a healthful choice. It symbolized a willingness to innovate, to embrace change without losing her essence. Each meal echoed her heritage while embracing this personal renaissance. In search of affirmation, she sought out her mother's old recipes buried in the yellowed pages of a family cookbook. The nostalgia washed over her as she traced the lines. Each recipe a bittersweet reminder of cherished family moments, but they also represented the weight of expectations she might be ready to shed. Could she reinterpret her mother's classic dishes in a way that felt authentic and true to both her past and the future she aspired to? This internal debate was more than culinary. It was deeply personal. In embracing a new approach to cooking, she was questioning the very foundation of her traditions. Would her family recognize these dishes as familiar comforts enhanced for better health? Or would they see them as betrayals of their shared history? On a whim, she called her sister, Megan, initiating a conversation that would become a pivotal moment. "Maybe you should try some of my new recipes before Thanksgiving," Betty suggested, her voice steady as she sought validation. "I think you might actually like them." "Okay, sis, but I hope you're not trying to sell me on kale." Megan's teasing was lighthearted but still held weight. It struck a chord of concern in Betty. Would the entire family view her attempts through a lens of skepticism? That evening, she laid her heart into making a vibrant autumn salad to serve at dinner. The mixture of roasted butternut squash and nutty arugula paid homage to her roots while embracing a fresh, modern twist. It was a gamble, but it exemplified the balancing act she was trying to master, honoring her past while embracing the present. As she set the table, adorned with the fresh plates of new recipes, anxiety wrapped around her like an unwanted scarf. With every flicker of the candlelight, it felt constricting, reminding her of the importance of this meal. Would her family recognize the effort? Would they appreciate the taste of their roots standing side by side with this new life she was carving? Just then, Ryan entered, his eyes widening at the colorful spread before him. "Wow, Mom, this is incredible," he said, genuine curiosity lighting his features. As moments like this began accumulating, so did the excited hope inside her. Still, heavy shadows lurked as her mind flashed to Thanksgiving Day. What if they reacted with disdain? The possibility of rejection cast a dark veil over her aspirations, forcing her to confront the truth of her own journey. Was she brave enough to stand tall amid the criticism? Betty's breath caught as she stared at the preparations ahead and her reflections. The realization struck like lightning. This meal was more than just food. It was the manifestation of her growth, a pathway to acceptance of self, and the renegotiation of values through which she could dismantle the fears binding her. As the clock ticked closer to the big day, a question ignited within her thoughts. Just how far was she willing to go to ensure her family supported her transformation? It suddenly became clearer it was time to test not only their acceptance of her choices, but also her own resolve. Thanksgiving was not merely a gathering. It was the battleground upon which she would confront this transition head-on. Would she summon the courage to face the monumental challenge ahead, or would she retreat into her familiar comfort zone, letting the opportunity slip away? The air in the kitchen felt thicker as Thanksgiving loomed closer, each day a reminder of the pivotal decisions that lay ahead. Betty stood at the counter, her hands wrapped around a wooden spoon, stirring a bubbling pot of her spiced quinoa stuffing. The aroma wafted through the home, a fragrant blend of warmth and intention. She had poured her essence into this dish, every spice an echo of her journey so far. Yet doubt flickered, uninvited, as she fought to quell thoughts of potential disapproval. Could flavors redefine perceptions? Each bite was more than sustenance. It was a quiet declaration of her newly embraced identity. A part of her yearned for acceptance, validation that what she crafted wasn't a perversion of family legacy, but an evolution of it. The previous week flickered vividly in her mind. The phone conversation with Megan had ignited more than just support, it had opened a door into her fears. What if they hate it? She had confided, her vulnerability spilling like the rich stock she seasoned with herbs, revealing how fragile her confidence still felt. Her sister's laughter had momentarily reassured her, a buoy amid the sea of uncertainty. Just be you, Betty. They love you no matter what. But could they love the new her? As she prepared for the onslaught of opinions, she often found herself rehearsing lines in her head how to explain her culinary twists without sounding apologetic. It wasn't just food, it was a personal manifesto. Could she articulate that with enough conviction to sway doubters? Each dish was a conversation, a challenge to her family to embrace change rather than resist it. Betty took a deep breath, inhaling the aromatic steam rising from the pot. This was her moment of clarity amid chaos. She decided to confront not only the skepticism she anticipated but the nagging doubt that plagued her own spirit. Engaging her family in the meal wasn't merely a test of their acceptance, but a reckoning for her, a moment to affirm who she had become and who she aspired to be. The following days turned into a whirlwind of preparation, each twirl of a whisk clarifying her vision, each chop of a vegetable symbolizing the cutting away of constraints. She was growing deftly comfortable with her abilities. It wasn't simply about cooking, she was mastering the art of transformation, both of herself and her creations. Yet with every step forward, her resolved face masked layer upon layer of anxious thoughts, the fear of inadequacy lurking just beneath. Thanksgiving morning arrived, a canvas unmarred by consequence, but heavy with potential. She stood in front of the mirror, the reflection presenting not just a mother, but a woman determined to redefine familial bonds and expectations. She practiced her smile, her mannerisms, navigating between excitement and fear on the drive to her parents' house. Her palms clammy against the steering wheel, she rehearsed her words. Would they see the spirit of her journey in those dishes? Would they understand the love and stories woven into each recipe? She was anxious, yet driven, determined to stake her claim on this new identity. As she parked and stepped onto the familiar porch, nerves roiling within, she kept whispering affirmations under her breath. The door swung open, revealing faces that had always been a source of comfort. But today, those same faces felt like an audience waiting to judge. Betty took a breath, the inhalation filling her with fortitude, and crossed the threshold with her head held high. But just as a hushed silence fell over the room, and eyes met hers in questioning curiosity, unease tightened in her chest. The moment had arrived, and the stakes felt surging high. Would they embrace her culinary revolution, or would the shadows of tradition overshadow her hard-earned transformation? Betty stood at the crossroads, staring at a life-altering moment, her heart pounding like a drum echoing in a vast, empty space. One of the dishes was about to set the tone for their entire gathering, the chance to rise or falter under the weight of familial criticism resting firmly on her shoulders. With her pulse racing and courage wavering, she stepped boldly forward, ready to face the examination of her own evolution. In that silence charged with anticipation, she initiated the pivotal question that would shape not just the meal, but her very future. So, who wants to try something new today? The room fell into an uneasy stillness, all eyes fixed intently on Betty, scrutinizing not just the plate she held, but the transformation it represented. The air hummed with expectation, thick with memories of unyielding family traditions, a palpable reminder of all she was challenging. She felt their breaths as 1,000 unspoken questions swirled around her, leaving her with a sense of vulnerability so acute it threatened to undo her resolve. "Are you serious?" Her mother finally broke the silence, her tone an unmistakable blend of disbelief and concern. It was an instinctive reaction, one that pulled Betty back to her childhood, where tradition was sacrosanct and her choices had been carefully delineated. The weight of her mother's gaze pressed heavily on her shoulders. "Yes," Betty said, firmly yet softer than she intended. "I've made some changes this year, something new." Even as she spoke, her mind raced, panicking over the validity of that which she had crafted. Was the new she referred to truly worthy of the family's affection? Would they recognize her sincerity, or would their hearts recoil in judgment? In the midst of this, her sister Megan stepped forward, a flash of support in her eyes. "I'm excited to try it. New recipes are always fun, right, Mom?" Megan's voice offered the first of what she hoped would be waves of encouragement. Betty's heart surged momentarily, but doubt quickly sandwiched that hope. Would her mother's skepticism soften under the suggestion of support? "New is different," her mother replied, crossing her arms defiantly. "And different isn't always better, Betty." Each word dripped with the weight of her mother's love, wrapped tightly with years of traditional expectations. It wasn't malice. It was fear that lay in the heart of change. Now, all the rehearsal, all the conversations with Megan felt like a distant echo. Betty could feel the shadows of her insecurities closing in, threatening to drown her in a cycle of self-doubt. As she looked to her family, a pivotal question emerged, replacing her bravado. How much of herself was she willing to risk for the chance of acceptance? What if, she interjected with renewed intention, This is how we can add to our legacy instead of replacing it. The words struck a chord, and she saw a flicker of contemplation in her mother's eyes. Suddenly, the stakes seemed higher. It was no longer just about the dinner. It was about growing up, about moving into an identity that embraced both her past and future. Her body felt electric, just on the verge of revelation. If she wanted to embody this shift, she had to believe in it as much as she urged her family to. Betty took a deep breath, focusing on the dish before her. This quinoa stuffing represents my heritage. Too, it's not a rejection of who we are, but an expansion of it. She lowered the dish slightly, allowing the aromas to swirl around them like an invitation. Something shifted in the room. Eyes began to light up, exchanging glances rife with curiosity. Perhaps the tension was deflating. "Okay, let us see what you've got," her father chimed in, amusement playing at the corner of his lips. The weight of tradition felt slightly less burdensome, ushered along by the growing warmth of familial dialogue. One by one, they reached out to try a spoonful. The initial bite was swift. Betty watched their expressions closely, hoping for the smiles she so dearly craved. Laughter erupted when her younger cousin declared that it didn't taste like cardboard at all, an indictment of last year's dish, and a binding glue of acknowledgement about her growth. Betty felt her heart lift with the potential of connection growing stronger by the minute. What had started as tension was now transforming into a celebration of possibilities. As each person took a bite, she could sense the redefining of familial dynamics happening at the table, a shift from rigidity to open dialogue. But just as confidence began to blossom within her, her mother's thoughtful expression returned as she took a slower bite. "It's good," she said finally, though it felt like an anchor had dropped. "But what's next? Is this just a phase?" The question pierced the air, hanging heavily. Betty's stomach knotted once more. The challenge now resurfacing with a title of permanence, all that she had strived for could suddenly feel precarious. Just a phase? She wrestled internally, grappling with the reality that even acceptance needed further solidification. Perhaps this was more than a mere Thanksgiving dinner. It was the beginning of a longer journey, one where identity would be carved not just on plates, but embraced in spirit. How could she construct a future that intertwined both herself and her family in this new trajectory? Steeling herself, Betty contemplated the connection between transformation and legacy, ready to respond. With the weight of her family's expectations still present but softened, she took a firm step into that conversation, determined to pioneer through this uncharted territory. "Actually, today is just the beginning," she started, the words hanging in the air, poised for their impact as she braced herself for the deeper questions they would explore. How would they all fit into this new landscape of her life? Betty's declaration hung in the air with an urgency that felt almost palpable, a challenge and an invitation intertwined. As her family contemplated her statement, the laughter faded to a close murmur, tight with unexpressed concerns and intrigue. What did it mean for her, and more importantly, what could it mean for them? Begin what? Her mother ventured carefully, a glimmer of curiosity tucked between her skeptical brow. The familial comfort of the past was still vivid, a nostalgia strongly rooted in known traditions, yet Betty sensed a stirring beneath it, an opening. "Well," Betty hesitated, her resolve faltering momentarily. "I want to explore food that reflects who I am today, not just out of obligation, but as a celebration of our evolution." Each word felt electric, tinged with trepidation, yet alive with myriad possibilities. Her mother's brow furrowed as she processed the implications of such a shift. Megan chimed in. "I think that's a great idea, Betty. It's important for us to embrace who we are, and that includes being creative in our lives." Noticing their mother's perplexity, she leaned forward, a touch protective over Betty's burgeoning assertiveness. The room seemed to shrink as all eyes returned to her. Betty took another deep breath, a calculated move to cement her burgeoning confidence. "I'm realizing that growth doesn't mean rejecting the past entirely. It means building upon it." With every pair of eyes trained on her, Betty felt a swell of determination in her chest. She wasn't just speaking about quinoa stuffing. She was tapping into a broader defiance against stagnation. Each question, each uncertain glance from her family was like a wave lapping against her resolve, nudging her to stand firm. "What do you mean by that?" Her father's voice pierced through the tension, genuine interest surfacing behind the cloud of caution. She turned to him, seizing the moment to illuminate her path forward. This isn't just about changing recipes. It's about taking ownership of my voice, about adding my chapter to our family story. It's me saying that our legacy can evolve, just as we do. Each sentence felt like an assertion of self. She spoke more boldly now, aware that this was the pivot from mere culinary experimentation to personal reinvention. And yet, Betty knew that the pride of this moment carried burdens too. Reactions had immediate implications. Each nod or frown from her family would shape the contours of her next steps. If she wanted to lead transformation, she needed not just their acceptance, but their active participation. Her mother leaned back, arms crossed again, but the expression softened somewhat. And how do you plan to do that? Her mother's probing tone danced delicately between skepticism and a desire to understand. Betty paused, a rush of ideas cascading through her mind. I'm thinking of hosting a monthly dinner, where I can try new recipes, and we can talk about our experiences, share our stories and ideas. I'll bring the new, and you bring the familiar. This way, we create a fusion. Megan's eyes sparkled with excitement. I love that. Like a cooking club, but family style. Yet, the apprehension was still visible in her mother. But will that really work? What if it's too different? What if, after all this, you decide to change again? The worry etched into her face hit Betty with fresh weight. Was she prepared for that? Eager to address her mother's doubts, Betty replied, I'll still be here, still your daughter. This isn't about uprooting who we are. It's about depth and dimension. I want us to navigate this together. As the room simmered in thoughtful silence, Betty felt a flicker of unexpected recognition. This was no longer just about acceptance. It was about forging a deeper bond. She was crafting a path where she could coalesce her identity with those she loved. But beneath the burgeoning hope lay an unsettling question. Would her family embrace this venture wholeheartedly, or would old fears prevail? The gathering remained at a precipice, unsettled yet excited, as conversations tangentially brushed against the future. With each shared word, Betty could feel herself standing taller. Yet the latent tension thundered beneath the surface, clamoring for resolution. As the clinking of cutlery resumed, and the conversation shifted to the specifics of their future meals, Betty contemplated inward. What if this journey opened other avenues of exploration beyond the confines of the dining table? What was waiting for her outside these walls, in the broader world beyond her family's traditions? Maybe it's time for me to explore more than just recipes, she thought, silently to herself. Thoughts of travel, culture, and the fusion of flavors danced in her mind, pushing against the boundaries of what she believed to be. The moment felt charged with possibilities, each pulse of excitement mingling with uncertainty. And so, she vowed silently to herself, an oath to achieving more than just familial acceptance. The time had come to face the unknown, not only in her home, but in herself, as she peered into a new horizon brimming with potential. Little did they know, change was just beginning to unfurl its wings in her life. As conversations turned to lighter topics, Betty made a silent commitment. She needed to uncover more than just culinary courage. With the allure of many untraveled roads whispering to her, she felt emboldened to venture beyond culinary improvements to explore who she would become. Let us keep this going, she thought firmly, walking alongside the warmth of her family. But in the very next moment, another question loomed large in her mind. What if the next phase called for much more than she expected? The family dinner cocooned in a fabric of uncertainty, and warmth lingered in Betty's mind for hours. The moment her mother had leaned back, arms crossed yet softened, wasn't just about receiving her idea. It was about a transition that cast ripples through her entire identity. Who was she becoming? And how would that impact the delicate fabric of her family? As the days blurred into the week, Betty busied herself in the kitchen experimenting with flavors and techniques she had yet to master. Each recipe brought a kaleidoscope of scents, serenading her with the iconic tunes of culinary experimentation. Spices mingled with vibrant ingredients, and the sizzle of sautéing vegetables resounded like an anthem of bold choices. Yet in the solitude of her kitchen, the fear of disconnection from her family echoed louder than any frying pan. Each dish became not just a fusion of taste, but a test of acceptance. The weekend approached, bringing with it the inaugural dinner, she had envisioned. Expectations simmered beneath the surface as she meticulously curated a menu blending nostalgia and innovation. A savory pumpkin soup seasoned with ginger, accompanied by rosemary cornbread that harked back to their family gatherings. It was a bridge between who they had always been and who could emerge through this journey. But as she stood at the stove, doubts crept in. What if her family rejected her dishes? What if her attempt at reinvention led to a chasm rather than connection? Betty remembered her mother's worried expression as she voiced her fears during their last conversation. This was more than a meal. It was a pact, an exploration of their shared legacy, and an opening to the unknown. The late afternoon sun cast soft shadows on the dining table, a space set for the fusion of old and new. Each place setting was intentional, adorned with memories and reflections of the past. As friends and family began to gather, a palpable buzz filled the air, a mixture of unease and anticipation. Her heart raced as they settled in, the familiar weight of familial expectation palpable on her shoulders. "You've done a beautiful job," Megan declared, carrying a bottle of wine that paired effortlessly with the menu, her eyes glinting with a mix of admiration and excitement. "Thank you," Betty replied, attempting to mask her own apprehension. The moment felt monumental, like standing on the precipice of a defining moment. She took a deep breath and began serving her soup, the creamy consistency gliding into bowls with the graceful confidence she was beginning to cultivate. As the soup made its way around the table, she could sense her family's mixed feelings. Familiarity and uncertainty flickered between bites. Betty watched carefully, each hesitant smile and scrutinizing taste testing sending ripples through her budding confidence. "It's different," her father remarked cautiously, his brows deeply knit as he attempted to decipher the new flavors flooding his palate. "Is that bad?" she questioned, her voice a blend of vulnerability and steadfastness. "No, just unusual," he replied, a hint of reluctance betraying his words. In that moment, the weight of transformation struck her like a lightning bolt. This wasn't merely an adjustment to flavors, but a shift within the familial heartbeat. She realized she wasn't merely seeking their approval. She was inviting them into her growth, pushing them to expand alongside her. Betty soon noticed little shifts. Her mother, hesitant at first, started asking questions about the ingredients, visibly intrigued. Megan chimed in with ideas for future meals, enthusiasm bubbling forth. Every conversation at the table became a dance between Betty's vision and her family's acceptance, ebbing and flowing like the tides, with dish after dish. The evening concluded with laughter driving vibrant discussions about family stories. It was then, amidst this exchange, that a revelation hit her. This culinary endeavor was more than a personal expression. It had morphed into a collective awakening, a shared venture into uncharted territory where everyone flourished and old fears transformed into possibilities. But beneath the confetti of success lingered an unsettling truth. Betty had embarked on a journey that might transcend the plate, challenging not just her family's acceptance of new dishes, but their acceptance of change itself. As the evening waned, she retreated into her thoughts, contemplating how deep this reawakening would reach. What if she could bring the same enthusiasm to other aspects of her life? How would she wield these flavors of change in other realms? With her heart racing, she wondered, was it time to embrace potential in realms beyond her family dinners? The world beckoned her with questions that were yet to be unraveled, and as she drifted to sleep that night, one question gnawed at her mind, wrapping her in excitement and fear. What other dimensions of my life are awaiting a transformation? Betty awoke to the sound of birds chirping outside her window, the dawn of a new day carrying the promise of opportunity. The memories of last night's dinner replayed in her mind like a film punctuated with moments of stark realization. Each joyful exchange at the table had been fuel for her emerging identity, but it was the echo of her father's cautious words, "just unusual," that lingered longest. Unusual. Was that an acceptance of change, or simply a form of resistance cloaked in uncertainty? Determined to channel this mix of emotions into action, Betty set out to embrace the unknown, starting with her job at the local print shop. The mundane routine she had cultivated felt increasingly stifling. What if, just like her culinary experimentation, she could inject her own creativity into her professional life? By mid-morning, She found herself rifling through a stack of brochures someone had brought in for printing. As she thumbed through the colorful layouts, an idea began to blossom. What if she developed a series of design templates that captured the community's essence? The vibrant colors, local imagery, and heartfelt messages would invite connection, just as her dinner had a wave of apprehension washed over her. What if her coworkers dismissed her ideas? Yet, an ember of determination flickered within. She would propose a meeting, presenting her vision. Tension bubbled in her stomach as she crafted her pitch, using words that resonated with her burgeoning sense of self. Each phrase was a step further from her old self, steering her towards a bold, expressive version of who she could become. In the conference room, her colleagues gathered, their casual chatter fading as she delineated her vision. Betty's hands trembled slightly as she revealed mood boards filled with photographs of local landmarks and artwork made by community members. "These are our roots," she stated passionately, her voice steadying, "and I believe we can bring that spirit into our work." A few skeptical glances did surface, her coworkers' faces mirroring her earlier fears of rejection. But her manager, a seasoned designer named Julia, leaned forward intently. "I've always believed our work could connect more directly with the community," she mused, a hint of warmth in her tone. "This could be the fresh approach we need." As the conversation unfolded, Betty felt something shift. The tension and apprehension that had once gripped her began to dissolve, replaced by a growing sense of clarity. Her colleagues posed thoughtful questions, suggestions sparking like fireworks, igniting enthusiasm she hadn't anticipated. After the meeting, Julia beckoned her aside. "I can see some real potential in this idea. Why don't we collaborate on the first project together? It could be a chance for both of us to grow." The warmth of encouragement enveloped Betty, buoying her spirits. This wasn't merely a professional endeavor. It was a reflection of who she has become through her culinary journey. Each design became an extension of herself, her values manifesting in visual form, encapsulating the essence of welcome and transformation. With newfound vigor, she delved into her work, envisioning the community's stories fused with creativity, a tapestry of resilience shared through art. Betty wasn't just proposing change, she was embodying it. Yet, lurking in the back of her mind was a gnawing thought. Was this merely the beginning of a much larger transformation? That evening, lying awake in bed, questions flickered like candles in the dark. What if her journey didn't just remain within the walls of the print shop or her family dinners? What if this awakening reached further, into all facets of her life, challenging her perceptions, her comfort zones, perhaps even her friendships or long-held beliefs? With a soul stirred by curiosity and a heart beating with ambition, Betty pondered the scope of her aspirations. If she could tap into this kind of creativity and enthusiasm at work, what else could she unearth about herself? A sense of urgency sparked within her, demanding exploration beyond the horizon she had known. The night yielded to resolve as she closed her eyes, ready to confront or perhaps embrace new dimensions of her life. The road ahead promised revelations, but one thought haunted her as sleep brushed her consciousness. What was waiting to surface once she pushed past the edges of her comfort? A fresh wave of energy surged through Betty as she prepared to meet Julia for their first collaborative project. The weight of anticipation mingled with the thrill of potential change, and she found herself reflecting on the magnitude of what this partnership could mean for both her career and personal growth. As they settled at a conference table adorned with sketches and design samples, Betty felt a rush of excitement tempered by an undercurrent of self-doubt. What if Julia saw through her facade of confidence? Sensing her tension, Julia smiled warmly, breaking the ice. "I'm excited to explore your ideas, Betty. Tell me about what inspired you to create the templates for local businesses." The question reverberated in Betty's mind, illuminating her motivations. This wasn't just about design. It was about connection, bonding with the fabric of her community while also finding her own place within it. "I want our designs to reflect not only the services these businesses provide, but the stories behind them," she replied, her voice gaining strength. "There is so much history and personal touch in each storefront, and I think we can bring that to life through our work." Julia nodded, intrigued. "I love that. But tell me, what is holding you back from sharing that passion more widely? You're clearly invested." Betty hesitated, the question prompting an introspection she hadn't anticipated. Her voice, barely above a whisper, wavered with uncertainty. What if they think it's silly? The fear of judgment brushed her like a cold wind, a remnant of her years spent conforming to others' expectations. Let us turn that uncertainty into focus, Julia encouraged, her tone steady. Why don't we aim to feature a few of these businesses in a launch piece? You could interview them, capture their essence directly, and infuse that into the designs. It'll be an authentic representation. Excitement tinged with anxiety surged through Betty as Julia continued to outline the plan. This would not only challenge her professionally, but personally as well. Reaching out to local business owners meant stepping into the unpredictable realm of confrontation. The organic creativity of their feedback would shape her designs, but it also required her to stand firm in her conviction. I can do that, Betty stated, her voice steadier now, quiet confidence rising like a tide within her. I'll reach out personally. It'll help me connect more deeply to the project. A renewed intensity filled her as she mapped out her approach. Betty recognized that vulnerability in this endeavor was a source of power. Each interview would not just expand her professional capabilities, but perhaps reshape her understanding of what it meant to belong to her community and herself. The following days unfolded in a whirlwind of activity. Betty found herself oscillating between exhilaration and nervousness as she set out to interview various local business owners. Each conversation unearthed layers of personality and experience she hadn't anticipated. The exchange breathed life into her designs in ways she hadn't expected. However, the revelations were not solely about the businesses. Each dialogue forced her to confront long-held beliefs about herself. As she listened to stories of triumph, struggle, and resilience, a mirror was held up to her own journey, a reflection of her transition from the confines of predictability into an unknown universe bursting with potential. One particular conversation with a local baker resonated deeply. The baker spoke of her passion for creating recipes that honored her family traditions while embracing modern flavors. It's about evolution, she said, her blue eyes sparkling. Just like us, our recipes are transformed through time, but the essence remains. Betty realized this was not too different from her evolving identity. Later, when she returned to the print shop, fervor pulsed through her as she began incorporating the stories into her templates. Each design was no longer just a visual element. It became a narrative, a thread weaving together the tapestry of community. Yet, even in this creative flow, the nagging truth of self-doubt resurfaced. What if this energy didn't extend beyond her designs? What if she didn't have the strength to empower her colleagues or rally the community at large to embrace her vision? The fear of navigating uncharted waters loomed, challenging her emerging self-perception. As she leaned into the new rhythms of her life, Betty felt a shift. The patterns were complex and ever-changing, not unlike her own journey. Determining how to facilitate and foresee growth became paramount. What would she do when faced with skepticism, perhaps even rejection? Small doubts began to loom larger as she focused on her actions. With each passing day, the urgency of her evolution intensified, and the stakes appeared higher than when she had started. Her path lay before her like an intricately woven tapestry, each thread an opportunity for transformation, but it beckoned her to confront the unknown again. As she gathered her notes, preparing for the next meeting with Julia, a singular thought intertwined her excitement and trepidation. Would she be ready to vocalize her vision even when fear whispered otherwise? The sun streamed through the window, casting golden rays across the kitchen, where Betty found herself immersed in a meditative state of culinary creativity. Thanksgiving, once a source of anxiety and familial tension, was now a canvas for her transformation, vibrant and layered with meaning. Her spiced quinoa stuffing had been well received, opening an unexpected avenue of acceptance. Her confidence burgeoned, knitting her growing identity to the essence of who her family had always been. As the holiday approached, Betty continued to refine her recipes, each meal a testament to her commitment toward bridging tradition with innovation. No longer did she feel tethered to the past. She was embracing its flavors while painting a new picture of her future. Just as she had infused warmth into her dishes, she infused strength into how she presented herself. Each stir of the pot, each dash of seasoning symbolizing an affirmation of her evolving self. On the day of Thanksgiving, as the family gathered around the table anticipating the feast, Betty felt a simmering excitement under her skin. This year, her spread showcased her culinary growth, everything from garlic rosemary mashed potatoes to her renowned pumpkin pie topped with a ginger crumble, showcasing a blend of nostalgia and the flair she had developed. It was an invitation to her family to witness how change could coexist with the joys of remembrance. Her heart raced as she served the dishes, watching her family react. Their mouths opened in surprise and appreciation, savoring each bite. The laughter mingled with the aroma filling the room, wrapping the family in a cocoon of connection. Then came the moment she had anticipated and feared, a space for conversation, to rekindle lines of communication around the forkfuls of food steeped in love. "This is actually really good, Betty," her father exclaimed, smiling warmly. "It's not just new, it feels like home." Their approval wrapped around her like a warm blanket. The realization washing over her, this was not merely acceptance of her culinary choices, but recognition of her right to evolve. The hesitations in her mother's expression began to melt away as a proud nod affirmed their shared heritage. It was no longer just a matter of food. It was an exploration of the familial bonds that transcended generations. Yet, it was during family sharing of stories, laughter echoing through the dining room, memories reigniting, that the true capaciousness of her transformation unfolded. As each family member recounted their tales, their fears, their dreams, it became evident that the meal wasn't merely a reflection of her growth. It was a portal for everyone to do the same. Betty felt solidarity and warmth. This felt like a rebirth, not just for her, but for them all. After dinner, when the dishes were put aside and the glow of appreciation lingered, Betty took a deep breath and found the courage to voice what she envisioned beyond that holiday. "What if we meet monthly to explore recipes together?" She articulated her idea, eyes sparkling with the potential of familial evolution. Each month, we could experiment with familiar foods while sharing stories and making new memories. The responses ignited something within her. Her family leaned in, intrigued by the prospect of ongoing exploration. In that moment, a sense of legitimacy washed over her, validation of her journey and the establishment of her place within her family and community. The very act of proposing dynamic gatherings shifted something pivotal inside her. They could indulge their collective history while constructing a new legacy, one not solely bound by convention, but driven by expressive adventure. As her family engaged eagerly with her proposition, Betty witnessed the realization of a dream, a commitment to embody change that extended beyond the kitchen. It was an affirmation that tradition does not stand in opposition to innovation. Rather, it can thrive in the shared bond of love, openly embracing the unfolding journey of each individual. Walking home later, with the sky painted in hues of crimson and amber, a profound sense of achievement enveloped her. For the first time, she felt undeniably confident in her choices, not only in her culinary endeavors, but in her identity as both a mother and an individual. Betty held the reins of her story, with both past and future harmonizing in her heart. With renewed purpose, she envisioned future endeavors that extended into her creativity at the print shop, where she could blend design with storytelling, share her voice, and foster connections, further transforming lives, including her own. Courage surged through her as she realized she was carving out not one, but many future paths. Her culinary explorations symbolized a new era of an adventurous spirit fueled by acceptance. Feeling invigorated, she resolved to continue stepping boldly into the unknown, determined to craft her narrative and help her family thrive in the light of evolution. The taste of her triumph was rich and fulfilling. She wasn't merely embracing change, she was leading it. Her transformation felt anchored, ready to reimagine the definition of home with each bite she took. This was her moment of personal achievement, an affirmation of her strength and creativity, and the beginning of a long and fruitful journey. Now, as friends, it is your turn to take action. You need to subscribe now to stay connected and follow this journey toward transformation and growth. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support our community of personal growth enthusiasts. Comment your reactions and theories about this extraordinary conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who crave inspiring stories of transformation and resilience. Your support means the world. Stand with us in the pursuit of storytelling that matters.